Johnny Carson reigned as America's premier television personality. Film icons, music superstars. Arguably, none commanded greater influence than Johnny because he entered millions of homes night after night after night. Johnny Carson dominated late-night television with razor-sharp intelligence and effortless charisma that audiences adored nationwide. For 30 years, he transformed awkward situations into comedic gold and challenging guests into entertaining conversations, most evenings at least. Yet, even television's unflappable monarch had his boundaries. Behind the scenes, certain celebrities irritated him so profoundly that tensions escalated, grudges developed, and several found themselves permanently excluded from the guest roster. So which personalities managed to disturb Johnny Carson so significantly that at 79, he still recalled their names with clarity? Let's explore all 10 individuals who tested his legendary patience. Number 10. Frank Sinatra. Johnny Carson mastered the art of appearing unruffled, coolly composed on camera, intellectually sharp beneath the surface, and perpetually prepared with clever responses. However, when Frank Sinatra entered the equation, even Carson's famously steady control over The Tonight Show occasionally wavered noticeably. Frank didn't simply arrive at NBC's facilities. He descended upon them regally. His entourage preceded him, adjusting environmental temperatures, installing specialized teleprompter equipment, and reserving substantial space accommodating up to 12 personal associates alongside the performance area. NBC security personnel didn't casually record his entrance. They documented his arrival using bold capitalized lettering, essentially preparing for quasi-royal visitation. Carson, preferring orderly and predictable proceedings, anticipated the inevitable. Showtime conducted exclusively on Sinatra's terms. While Johnny appreciated extraordinary guest drawing power, he fundamentally understood that hosting transcended merely filling chairs. It required balance, pacing, and authority, elements Sinatra routinely challenged by operating according to personal rhythms entirely. If something displeased Frank, he displayed his dissatisfaction unambiguously, whether addressing mispronounced names from junior production assistants, reportedly resulting in security escort removal, or lighting arrangements he found unsuitable. Frank established unmistakable communication channels for expressing disapproval. Carson, maintaining professional courtesy on camera, might dismiss these incidents lightly, but privately, the resulting stress manifested clearly. His assistants observed increased alcohol consumption those evenings, accompanied by muttered half-jokes like, "Chairman of the board certainly, though I remain the signatory on network compensation." Among the most memorable incidents occurred during 1976. Carson had progressed halfway through a peanut allergy monologue when unexpectedly, Sinatra strolled on stage casually, arm draped across Johnny's shoulders. The audience erupted thunderously. 40 seconds of continuous applause followed. Carson, blinking through the interruption, turned and quipped, "Are you requesting the entire broadcast?" Frank Sinatra winked, responding, "Only until the musicians finish packing equipment." The exchange became iconic television, electrifying entertainment, and it absolutely infuriated Carson internally. Home viewers perceived spontaneous, perhaps charming interaction. For Johnny, it represented deliberate power demonstration. The monologue constituted sacred territory where hosts established the evening's atmosphere. Sinatra, however, had casually claimed a portion without advance notification. This wasn't his first similar action, and Johnny suspected future recurrences remained likely. Nevertheless, Carson never publicly revealed this underlying tension. He consistently introduced Sinatra warmly, guided conversations toward comfortable reminiscences, nostalgic Rat Pack discussions, or memorable performances, carefully avoiding potential controversies including political disagreements, organized crime rumors, or Sinatra's complicated romantic history. Ratings invariably increased dramatically during these appearances, matching Carson's elevated blood pressure correspondingly. In reality, Carson recognized precisely what Sinatra contributed: excitement, prestige, event-like atmosphere. He wouldn't sacrifice these benefits over backstage irritations. Yet, beneath polished smiles and studio applause, subtle conflict persisted. Part of Johnny wanted to honor legendary talent. Another needed operational control over his broadcast. While Carson wore late-night television's crown unquestionably, Occasionally, even he necessarily deferred, however briefly, to Frank Sinatra's unmatched gravitational presence. Ultimately, Johnny managed these situations using his signature approach, gracefully, wittily, and silently.
Acknowledging that certain legendary figures operate beyond conventional boundaries. But if Sinatra's inclusion surprises you, prepare yourself for the remaining entries on this revealing list. Number 9, Chevy Chase. Johnny Carson possessed unparalleled ability making guests comfortable, conducting interviews combining humor, charm, and precisely calibrated authority. However, not everyone seated opposite him harmonized with The Tonight Show's established rhythm. One particular guest repeatedly disrupted this delicate equilibrium: Chevy Chase. While millions recognized Chase as breakthrough comedy sensation from Saturday Night Live during the 1970s, Carson perceived something entirely different beneath the sarcasm and smirks. The issue transcended Chase's celebrity status. Carson regularly welcomed famous personalities with substantial egos. What made Chase particularly challenging was his approach toward fame itself. His comedic style, characterized by deadpan delivery and caustic sarcasm, lacked the warmth Carson valued in guests. Audiences tuned in, expecting clever exchanges and good-natured teasing. When Chase occupied the guest chair, however, studio atmosphere often turned noticeably cold or uncomfortable. His verbal jabs registered less as friendly banter and more as personal attacks or mean-spirited commentary. Carson, having perfected making guests appear engaging while generating laughter, struggled when interaction dynamics shifted unexpectedly. He understood navigating conversations with sharp-witted personalities, but disliked when spotlight focus transformed into solitary performance, particularly when apparently challenging his hosting position. Chase frequently projected precisely this impression. His confident swagger, even subtly expressed, communicated unmistakable message. His appearance transcended merely participating. He arrived intending to command attention completely. Whispers throughout NBC suggested Carson viewed the younger comedian beyond mere difficulty. He potentially represented professional rivalry. Chase never concealed his ambition. Among SNL's early recognizable personalities, he rapidly achieved household recognition and temporarily emerged as potential late-night television successor candidate, according to industry insiders. This prospect displeased Carson, who had transformed The Tonight Show into nightly institution and resented anyone treating his platform as career advancement stepping stone. While Carson never publicly criticized Chase, insiders noted conspicuous absence of camaraderie between them. Their conversations lacked playful energy visible with other guests. Once cameras stopped recording, this distance apparently widened further. Within an environment where timing, tone, and mutual respect shaped successful segments, Chase simply disrupted established flow consistently. For Carson, television's smoothness master, certain guests ultimately proved unnecessarily problematic. But how could someone's quiet demeanor possibly prove more disruptive to Carson than Chevy Chase's evident ego? Continue watching for surprising revelation. Number 8, Fred Rogers. If Chevy Chase tested Carson's patience extensively, Fred Rogers completely dismantled his carefully constructed rhythmic approach. While Chase brought excessive ego to The Tonight Show, Mr. Rogers arrived utterly egoless. Somehow, this equally confounded Johnny Carson thoroughly. The booking appeared theoretically safe. Conceptually, the pairing seemed charming initially. Combine late night's wittiest host alongside television's warmest personality. Even production notes promised uncomplicated 5-minute segment, perhaps puppet appearances or similar light-hearted elements without substantive depth. However, once Fred Rogers stepped beneath studio lighting, entire atmospheric tone shifted dramatically. He didn't rush on stage riding audience applause momentum like typical guests. Instead, he walked deliberately, paused center stage, and addressed the audience gently. "Thank you very much, friends. I'm genuinely pleased joining you tonight." Audience members applauded hesitantly, uncertain whether he had concluded speaking. Production crews scrambled cueing appropriate audience response, but awkward silence lingered noticeably. Timing, that invisible rhythm maintaining Carson's program functioning precisely, suddenly lost synchronization completely. Johnny attempted lightening the moment humorously. He elevated his foot, revealing surprise matching white sneakers. "Fred, I wore these specifically honoring your visit," he remarked, smiling. Fred clasped hands together, smiled softly, responding, "That's genuinely considerate, Johnny. Proper footwear helps us prepare for playful activities." Studio audience chuckled politely, anticipating the host's reciprocal comment. Carson remained silent momentarily. Rogers had expressed genuine sentiment. No punchline, no comedic setup, simply authentic kindness. Within late night, television's established format, such sincerity created narrative disruption. Carson pivoted quickly. He requested amusing fan correspondence anecdotes or perhaps humorous childhood interaction stories. However, Rogers didn't manufacture humor merely generating laughter. Instead, he shared thoughtful story about child-fearing bathtub drainage systems and how imagination transforms fear into comprehension. Each sentence landed with measured tranquility. Words paced like lullabies, perfect addressing preschoolers, less ideal approaching midnight programming. Backstage, stopwatch operators fidgeted nervously. Carefully arranged monologue segments and planned comedic material progressively desynchronized. Writers eliminated jokes from preparation cards. Directors expanded camera framing, creating visual space, while Carson, among broadcasting's premier professionals, nodded courteously while perspiring beneath his collar, visibly. Unwritten professional understanding remained clear. Fred Rogers represented untouchable subject matter comedically. His presence projected such authentic purity and universal respect that treating him like typical guests risked appearing cruel fundamentally. Yet Carson simultaneously couldn't engage him like fast-talking actors or outrageous comedians typically. Standard conversational approaches proved ineffective. The established rhythm fractured completely. Home viewers interpreted this deliberate pacing as warmth. Production staff behind curtains experienced panic simultaneously. When commercials finally aired, Carson exhaled forcefully, visibly relieved. Crew members categorized the segment pacing catastrophe internally. Nielsen measurement reports indicated noticeable viewership decline during Rogers' appearance. Laughter counters, yes, they genuinely employed mechanical click counters tracking audience laughter, registered less than the half-typical audience responses compared with previous evening's animal segment. The verdict? Pleasant content, certainly, but problematically slow-paced television. Unexpectedly, something remarkable occurred subsequently. The following day, mailroom facilities overflowed. Hundreds of handwritten audience communications arrived. Many came from parents who typically avoided late programming, but watched specifically that evening, at their children's insistence. They weren't praising comedic content. They expressed appreciation giving Mr. Rogers brief spotlight opportunity within adult programming context. Fred de Cordova, Carson's veteran producer, considered it calculated compromise. "We gained substantial goodwill," he acknowledged privately, though sacrificing momentum temporarily. Adjustments followed consequently. Rogers' future appearances scheduled during December holiday periods when audiences demonstrated increased receptiveness toward nostalgic, gentle content. Writers reduced Carson's opening monologues by 2 jokes, creating additional timing, flexibility. They encouraged Rogers bringing physical props, miniature trolley cars, or puppets, providing Johnny tangible elements supporting improvisational commentary. Nevertheless, backstage precautionary measures continued. Directors maintained musical performances, prepared off-stage addressing potential pacing issues immediately. Carson maintained unfailing courtesy professionally. He'd shake Fred's hand, express sincere appreciation, and exit smiling consistently. However, following particularly gentle segment once, he reportedly leaned toward stage management personnel, whispering, "Schedule him following. Stand-up comedy performers exclusively hereafter. Never preceding them. I require caffeine subsequently." Years later, when privately questioned regarding his most challenging interview subject, not most problematic personally, but most professionally demanding, Carson reportedly smiled, responding, "Fred Rogers, wonderful individual certainly, though uniquely representing moments I simultaneously monitored broadcast timings, and personal cardiovascular indicators. Where Chevy Chase overwhelmed Carson through excessive egotism, Fred Rogers disarmed him through contemplative silence. Within that silence, something authentic and somewhat uncomfortable revealed itself. Two legendary figures sharing common platform, both brilliantly talented, both fundamentally decent, and both utterly mismatched rhythmically. But what happens when improvisation's master confronts rigidly scripted performance expectations? Continue watching, discovering who occupies our next position. Number 7. Bob Hope. Bob Hope, long considered NBC's institutional treasure, appeared on The Tonight Show carrying more than charismatic personality. He arrived fully equipped with comprehensive script. His representatives, perpetually planning ahead, delivered substantial packages containing pre-approved jokes, interview prompts, and camera direction specifications days preceding scheduled appearances. Carson, who thrived creating unscripted brilliance and organic audience responses, found himself constrained significantly, essentially reduced to cue card operator within his own broadcasting environment. Hope avoided direct eye contact during conversations. His gaze remained fixed on prompt cards positioned behind cameras, waiting for Carson delivering his next predetermined question, enabling his prepared punchline delivery. Even when Carson spontaneously deviated from script with impromptu follow-up inquiries, Hope remained unresponsive. He simply blinked momentarily, rearranged his reference materials, and delivered jokes exactly as written, completely ignoring conversational redirection attempts. Audience members laughed from conditioned response rather than genuine surprise, though authentic comedic energy diminished noticeably. Behind his desk, Carson's pencil visibly trembled between his fingers, barely concealing mounting frustration. The forced conversational cadence wasn't Carson's exclusive irritation. Relentless promotional content equally disturbed him. Hope rarely shared personal anecdotes or unrehearsed recollections. Instead, each appearance functioned essentially as advertisement. During 1978 appearance, he referenced Texaco Corporation 3 separate times within 10-minute segment. Carson, attempting salvaging entertainment value, commented, "Texaco receives more broadcast exposure than I do personally." This generated audience laughter, though everyone present detected weariness underlying his voice. One staff member recalled hearing him muttering backstage, "I've become introductory speaker for corporate sponsorship presentations." Circumstances worsened, considering Hope transcended guest status. He represented institutional fixture. Regardless whether substantive promotional material existed, NBC consistently extended invitations. He attracted older demographic viewership, and his special presentations generated millions in advertising revenue. When Carson attempted reducing Hope's appearance frequency, suggesting newer, fresher comedic talents, executives gently reminded him regarding financial operational priorities. Carson reluctantly acquiesced with specific conditions attached. Henceforth, Hope's visits received strategic scheduling. Producers arranged musical performance or more spontaneous personality immediately following, someone capable reinvigorating studio atmosphere effectively. Nevertheless, tension remained palpable. Staff observed predictable pattern. Whenever Hope entered the building, ambient temperature within Carson's dressing room seemingly dropped 10 degrees immediately. This atmospheric change didn't reflect performance anxiety, but resigned acceptance. Off camera, no open hostility existed. Basic politeness prevailed. Carson smiled, Hope joked, NBC processed substantial revenue. However, careful observers detected beneath Johnny's practiced affable expression, a man mentally counting minutes until segment conclusion. Despite Hope's legendary entertainment status, his Tonight Show appearances increasingly demonstrated that universal celebrity compatibility across all performance contexts doesn't necessarily exist. For Carson, who excelled through spontaneity and authentic connection, Hope's appearances progressively represented professional obligation rather than creative opportunity. The rhythm faltered consistently. The melody never resonated properly. For a host performing optimally through improvisation, these elements created substantial difference qualitatively. Number 6. Charlton Heston. Charlton. Heston didn't casually walk onto the Tonight Show stage. He entered resembling someone preparing for congressional testimony. With commanding vocal presence and Hollywood legends' imposing physical stature, he carried not merely Moses or Ben-Hur's historical aura, but the seriousness of someone believing every statement merited historical documentation. For Johnny Carson, who built his entertainment empire through lighthearted conversation and quick-witted exchanges, hosting Heston resembled less traditional guest interview and more formal symposium moderation. When Carson asked seemingly straightforward question like, "Did you experience injuries filming those spectacular chariot sequences, Chuck?" the response rarely provided simple affirmation or negation. Heston typically began explaining extensively: childhood equestrian experiences, Yale Shakespearean training background, philosophical perspectives regarding performance-related physical risk, before gradually approaching the actual anecdote concerning cracked ribs sustained during filming. 5 minutes later, the story finally concluded. Meanwhile, studio musicians fidgeted restlessly, and Carson's characteristic patience visibly diminished beneath politely maintained nodding. Even during commercial breaks, Heston maintained formal demeanor continuously. He clarified previous statements, provided historical context, quoted classical literature, and, reportedly encouraged Carson visiting the National Rifle Association's museum facilities. Meanwhile, audience members questioned whether they had inadvertently tuned into educational public broadcasting rather than late-night entertainment programming. Following 1987 interview segment, producers calculated audience laughter responses totaling merely 9 distinct occurrences. This represented dramatic reduction from Carson's usual 30 laughter instances. The program required reinvigorating immediately. Consequently, they scheduled Don Rickles immediately following Heston's appearance. Rickles observed the somber atmospheric mood, leaned toward his microphone, and quipped, "Has someone died recently?" The comment succeeded brilliantly. Audience response proved explosive. Carson exhaled relievedly backstage, quietly telling Rickles, "Always follow biblical prophets with controlled chaos." Nevertheless, Heston avoided complete banishment. His appearances simply required careful management. Producers limited his segments precisely 8 minutes maximum, sufficient time for single comprehensive anecdote without additional content. Political digressions, philosophical explorations, or extended monologues became prohibited explicitly. The objective emphasized maintaining brisk pacing and lighthearted tone, even necessitating prematurely concluding his often grandiose narratives. Carson harbored no personal animosity toward Heston. He respected his cinematic contributions substantially, though their on-camera chemistry remained awkward consistently. Carson thrived through spontaneity, that natural conversational exchange potentially transforming even unremarkable guests into engaging personalities. Heston, conversely, approached each appearance with courtroom closing arguments gravitas. He demonstrated minimal interest regarding jokes or playful interactions. He delivered proclamations instead. His presence commanded respectful silence rather than laughter primarily. Additionally, unacknowledged subtext complicated matters further. Heston's political affiliations. By the late 1980s, his public association with the National Rifle Association and outspoken conservative viewpoints transformed him into a controversial figure within increasingly progressive entertainment industry. Carson, preferring gentle bipartisan humor, avoiding personal attacks, likely found maintaining neutrality preferable to navigating Heston's deeply held convictions directly. When Heston occasionally bristled regarding jokes potentially questioning his belief system, Carson typically retreated, recognizing audience amusement rarely justified resulting tension. Ultimately, Carson maintained professional courtesy, though clearly Heston belonged primarily within cinematic, dramatic contexts rather than comedy-oriented late-night television. Some guests generated laughter naturally, others brought impressive credentials. Rarely did these qualities coexist comfortably on identical furniture arrangement. Number 5. Madonna. Madonna didn't arrive for her Tonight Show appearance. She invaded the broadcast aggressively. Her 1987 scheduled segment, supposedly promoting recent musical projects through lighthearted conversation, transformed into provocative performance art instantly. Carson barely initiated dialogue before she completely redirected narrative focus. Within 60 seconds, she leaned forward suggestively asking, "Johnny, have you experienced romantic relationships where partners utilize physical restraint?" The audience laughed nervously. Carson maintained professional composure despite evident discomfort. She continued unabated, delivering sexually charged commentary without hesitation. Every response incorporated suggestive innuendo, directed toward Johnny specifically. He attempted preserving conversational control, though his facial expression tightened noticeably, and pause durations increased progressively. Behind scenes, NBC executives shared his evident discomfort. Viewer complaints flooded switchboard operations. Audiences expressed outrage. Advertising sponsors communicated serious concerns. Carson himself expressed significant displeasure privately. Though never stating this publicly, unnecessary given his influence, Madonna never received subsequent invitations. He later joked her appearance made him feel comparable to religious student attending motorcycle enthusiast gathering. The issue transcended mere discomfort, however. Control represented equally important consideration. Carson operated structured programming, wholesome, intelligent, organized precisely. Madonna deliberately disrupted established format. She considered herself boundary-challenging performer. Carson viewed her behavior disrespectful fundamentally. Their approaches clashed irreconcilably. She represented unpredictable chaos. He embodied disciplined structure. One segment concluded, her position within potential guest roster terminated permanently. No public. Banishment announcement followed. No controversy developed subsequently. Simply opportunity quietly withdrawn permanently. With Carson, headline-generating exclusions proved unnecessary generally. Making him regret extending invitations initially sufficed, eliminating future possibilities completely. Number 4. Buddy Hackett. Buddy Hackett generated explosive laughter throughout his extensive career. Nightclubs, Las Vegas venues, film productions. His energetic storytelling capability appeared limitless, until abruptly concluding during Carson's program. His initial Tonight Show appearances delighted everyone involved. Carson genuinely appreciated Hackett's dynamic energy, colorful anecdotes, and unexpected narrative tangents. They maintained authentic friendship beyond professional contexts, occasionally enjoying golf outings away from Hollywood's constant scrutiny. However, television operated under substantially different regulatory guidelines than smoky nightclub environments. Federal Communications Commission standards, network broadcast policies, advertiser sensitivities, boundaries Hackett consistently challenged. His earliest Tonight Show appearances maintained relative content restraint. By mid-1970s, however, his material increasingly approached acceptable limitations aggressively. One particularly memorable evening permanently altered their professional relationship. Hackett arrived for scheduled appearance showing signs of intoxication, not entirely unusual among Las Vegas performers during that era, though sufficiently noticeable, affecting performance quality. Carson initiated their interview using standard questions regarding recent performance engagements. Hackett responded sharing exceptionally inappropriate anecdote involving recognizable celebrity couple, explicit terminology, and anatomical references unsuitable for broadcast television standards. Before Carson redirected conversation effectively, the narrative progressed into territory exceeding even late-night programming permissible content boundaries. NBC executives reportedly observed with horror as Carson's expression visibly tightened. He attempted steering discussion towards safer subjects, though Hackett continued uninterrupted. Following commercial break, Hackett's segment concluded prematurely, noticeably shortened compared with scheduled duration. Viewers noticed nothing beyond typical time constraint adjustments. Backstage, however, significant consequences developed immediately. Carson never criticized Hackett publicly. Their personal friendship continued unchanged. They still enjoyed occasional recreational activities together. Professionally, however, complete separation remained enforced strictly. When questioned years later regarding Hackett's noticeable Tonight Show absence, Carson simply stated, "Certain friends make better dinner companions than television interview subjects. Hackett understood the unspoken professional judgment. He never requested subsequent appearances. He continued successful entertainment career through Las Vegas performances, film projects, and comedy circuit engagements. However, Carson's platform, where professional standards superseded personal relationships, remained permanently inaccessible thereafter. Because with Carson, professional expectations outweighed personal connections consistently. Even genuine friendship couldn't overcome broken trust within entertainment's most carefully regulated environment. Number 3. Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton never intended becoming Carson's adversary. Though Johnny transformed him into recurring comedic target, and Newton responded definitively. For months during late 1970s, continuing into 1980, Johnny Carson regularly incorporated Wayne Newton jokes throughout monologues. These weren't typical gentle celebrity teasing, generating balanced audience appreciation. Comments regarding Newton's elaborate hairstyling, potentially requiring photosynthesis beneath Las Vegas lighting, or his flamboyant performance approach consistently generated audience laughter. Carson smiled appreciatively. Newton maintained public silence while privately seething, increasingly. Unlike other celebrities who participated good-naturedly or dismissed such ridicule, Newton internalized these experiences progressively. During this period, he wasn't merely lounge performer, but legitimately Las Vegas entertainment royalty. He had recently invested millions purchasing the Aladdin Hotel casino property. Any reputation damage potentially impacted both personal dignity and significant financial interests simultaneously. Throughout Vegas entertainment community, rumors circulated indicating Newton's growing resentment rapidly. Then during 1980 production day, rumors transformed into decisive action. Without providing advance notification, Newton traveled directly to Burbank and proceeded immediately into NBC studio facilities. Security recordings subsequently revealed him walking purposefully through corridors resembling someone executing deliberate mission. His silk shirt remained partially unbuttoned, fists clenched visibly, expression demonstrating cold determination. Johnny Carson sat within his office quietly reviewing program preparation materials. Before staff intervention occurred, Newton entered unannounced. According to longtime Tonight Show production manager Fred DeCordova, momentary silence filled the room completely. Newton leaned across the desk, speaking single sentence, calm but unmistakably threatening. Reference my name comedically again. I'll personally demonstrate concluding punchline effectiveness. Then departed immediately. Carson remained motionless temporarily. He didn't respond verbally. He didn't physically react. Nearly 60 seconds passed silently. Finally exhaling audibly, he remarked simply, "Well, certainly unexpected." That evening, writers quietly removed all Newton-related material from prepared monologue completely. Laughter originated from safer subjects, political figures, airline industry complaints, meteorological forecasting inaccuracies. The characteristic edgy quality Carson typically projected disappeared completely, particularly regarding Newton specifically. The confrontation produced observable impact. Insiders recognized substantial change immediately. Television's fearless late-night personality, previously joking unreservedly, now deliberately avoided single specific individual completely. This avoidance didn't reflect courage deficiency. Carson simply recognized provoking someone refusing participation carried potentially significant consequences. Newton wasn't an aspiring actor seeking publicity opportunities. He represented established entertainment figure, possessing substantial influence, industry connections, and clearly demonstrated tolerance limitations. When Wayne Newton eventually returned appearing on The Tonight Show, circumstances differed dramatically. Strictly negotiated conditions governed the appearance. No comedic references preceding or following his segment. No indirect historical allusions whatsoever. Everything presented appeared polished, professional, and noticeably stiff atmospherically. The characteristic casual conversational style Johnny Carson typically shared with guests became conspicuously absent entirely. What once represented entertainment community's comfortable gathering place transformed, in this specific instance, into unspoken battleground. The disagreement never generated tabloid headlines, though residual tension never completely dissipated either. Carson, perpetually maintaining cool broadcasting professionalism, apparently remembered that corridor confrontation permanently. It represented rare occasions when comedy's reigning monarch found himself temporarily silenced, not through scandal, ratings difficulties, or executive intervention, but through uncompromising presence of someone refusing becoming punchline perpetually. Ultimately, Newton didn't require elaborate monologue reclaiming personal dignity. Merely corridors, single sentence, and unforgettably intimidating expression, outshining 1,000 potential humorous responses effectively. Number 2. Joan Rivers. When Joan Rivers first appeared on The Tonight Show during 1965, she opened with comment causing Johnny Carson genuine laughter. "Being here creates overwhelming excitement. My mother finally discontinued crying continuously." That distinctive, self-deprecating humor precisely matched Carson's preferences. Throughout subsequent 2 decades, Rivers transcended guest status, becoming program fixture. Carson invited her approaching 100 separate appearances, eventually designating her regular guest hosting responsibilities. This honor represented unprecedented recognition Carson never extended previously, clearly indicating trust and professional admiration. Behind scenes, Rivers never disregarded this relationship casually. She regularly sent personalized handwritten correspondence, birthday celebrations spelling "boss" decoratively, and consistently sought his professional evaluation following substitute hosting responsibilities. However, admiration contains inherent limitations once ambition enters consideration. By 1986, Rivers had substituted for Carson nearly 200 evenings, establishing not merely audience rapport, but developing independent late-night television presence concurrently. She'd progressed beyond supportive role. She represented legitimate contender, potentially. That same year, Fox Network, ambitious organization determined creating industry recognition, recognized significant opportunity. They offered Rivers dedicated late-night programming, including complete creative authority and substantial financial compensation. These represented arrangements NBC never previously proposed. The opportunity presented groundbreaking potential. She would become first woman historically hosting major late-night television franchise. Nevertheless, she hesitated initially. Accepting meant departing Carson's protective professional shadow, creating personal decision-making complications. Advisors recommended discretion, fearing potential opportunity withdrawal following publicity. She consequently gambled maintaining press embargo, hoping personally contacting Carson before public announcement. Unfortunately, Carson discovered this development identical method millions of Americans experienced, watching NBC News broadcast at 6 o'clock. For Carson, this represented beyond business decision. It constituted personal betrayal. When Rivers attempted telephone communication that evening, technical personnel overheard his response. "I refuse speaking with her presently," then terminated connection immediately. Following morning, her name vanished from program booking schedules permanently. Handwritten memorandum formalized this decision officially. Joan Rivers received complete professional blacklisting subsequently. This disagreement cut deeper than typical Hollywood industry disputes. Carson transcended mentorship role. He represented someone believing loyalty remained non-negotiable fundamentally. He didn't begrudge professional advancement ambition, but silence preceding announcement proved unforgivable completely. From that moment forward, he never communicated with her again permanently. Rivers' new programming launched generating substantial industry discussion initially, though sustainability proved problematic. Audience measurements declined progressively, affiliate stations withdrew support, and backstage political complications undermined operational momentum. As her career encountered difficulties and personal tragedies developed, most devastatingly her husband's suicide, Carson remained emotionally unmoved completely. Not even Jay Leno, Carson's professional successor, dared lifting this prohibition during his 2-decade broadcasting tenure, respecting his predecessor's unspoken professional judgment. The prohibition finally concluded during 2014 when Jimmy Fallon welcomed Rivers returning to The Tonight Show platform. That evening, certain longtime production personnel commented feeling ghostly presence finally receiving spiritual release from the building itself. But the emotional wound represented one of late-night television's most profound historical conflicts. What began through laughter-based connection concluded in prolonged silence completely. Throughout subsequent years, Joan Rivers never received her most desired response from Carson. Not audience appreciation, not broadcasting opportunity, but simply returned telephone communication. Number 1. Don Rickles. Not every Tonight Show disagreement concluded silently. Some erupted loudly, outrageously, becoming impossible ignoring completely. While Joan Rivers previously broke Carson's heart emotionally, Don Rickles continuously tested his patience limits extensively. Rickles never approached comedy gradually. He charged forward like demolition equipment, leaving audiences suspended between shocked disbelief and uncontrollable laughter simultaneously. Upon entering Carson's platform, he unleashed insults lightning speed. His preferred targets included everyone present. Greeting studio audiences using deadpan delivery. Observe yourselves carefully. 30 million viewers watching someone resembling hockey equipment. Rickles consistently pushed acceptable boundaries, sufficiently maintaining everyone slightly uncomfortable, including Carson himself, perpetually anticipating his next unpredictable statement. Their chemistry created wild, unpredictable, occasionally combustible entertainment consistently. Rickles' comedic approach often produced collateral damage, particularly during substitute hosting responsibilities. One evening during 1976, while fulfilling guest hosting obligations, Rickles accidentally damaged Carson's treasured wooden cigarette container. He provided no explanatory note or acknowledgement subsequently. When Johnny returned the following evening, discovering the damage during live broadcast, he interrupted scheduled programming. Cameras followed him crossing NBC property, reaching nearby CPO Sharkey Production, where Rickles was filming currently. Without hesitation, Carson interrupted production, displayed the damaged container, confronting him directly. "You damage my personal property." Rickles, perpetual showman, feigned exaggerated terror comically. The audience responded enthusiastically. This moment achieved legendary status subsequently. Behind audience laughter, however, existed host recognizing chaos. Rickles introduced consistently. He frequently ignored timing guidelines, interrupted other guest opportunities, and addressed topics making NBC censorship personnel visibly uncomfortable. One particularly infamous 1985 incident involved Rickles mocking audience members' physical appearance, triggering substantial viewer complaint volume. Carson, while appreciating Rickles' talent, recognized necessary intervention. He imposed specific restrictions quietly, family-appropriate humor exclusively, avoiding personal criticism, and maintaining strict adherence regarding allocated timing parameters. Don Rickles rarely observed established guidelines consistently. He'd acknowledge understanding through nodding, or smiling briefly before charging past acceptable limitations immediately, barely acknowledging potential consequences. Nevertheless, despite tension his unpredictable performances frequently created, Johnny Carson welcomed him repeatedly. Their friendship, continuously tested through Rickles' relentless commentary, clearly transcended ratings considerations or production complications. Production personnel frequently compared Rickles with concentrated caffeine. Single dose during measurement periods adequately energized audiences, though repeated exposure potentially created operational challenges. Unlike Joan Rivers, whose sharpness occasionally caused lasting resentment, Rickles primarily generated manageable chaos temporarily. Somehow, Johnny consistently restored order, smiling knowingly afterward. Throughout his career, Carson navigated countless challenging personality encounters. Bob Hope's rehearsed presentations, Joan Rivers' painful betrayal, Wayne Newton's intimidating confrontation, Fred Rogers' disarmingly gentle presence, Charlton Heston's dramatic proclamations, Chevy Chase's arrogant demeanor, Frank Sinatra's commanding authority, Madonna's provocative behavior, Buddy Hackett's boundary-crossing anecdotes, and Rickles' relentless insult barrage. Behind laughter and perfectly timed responses, subtle tension indicators occasionally manifested. Carson's grip tightening around his pencil, coffee consumption accelerating slightly, smile lingering fractionally, too long artificially. These nearly imperceptible moments revealed Master Host's genuine craftsmanship. Carson transformed frustration into entertainment, betrayal into ratings opportunities, and discomfort into razor-sharp wit consistently. Reviewing classic Tonight Show episodes, observe carefully spaces between laughter moments. There, viewers witness skilled performer balancing consecutive challenging interactions while maintaining warm audience connection reaching millions nightly. Behind that, apparently calm exterior existed quiet hope that subsequent guests wouldn't present another wildcard situation. Controversial singer, challenging comedian, or disruptive personality introducing unexpected complications spontaneously. This invisible pressure, this delicate equilibrium maintenance represented the unacknowledged foundation supporting Johnny Carson's legendary charm and unshakable professional composure throughout his unparalleled broadcasting career. What factors truly enabled Johnny Carson smiling through betrayal, arrogance, and chaos during live broadcasting consistently? Was it meticulous control or pure survival instinct fundamentally? We welcome hearing your perspective regarding this fascinating television history chapter. Please share comments and subscribe supporting future content exploration.